welcome to the Cosmic Prayer. It's so great to be here this Monday, early evening, like in a late afternoon, 5 o'clock here. We are in the UK, and wherever you are, whatever time it is, welcome to the Cosmic Prayer. We meet here every week at this time with an inspirational guest that I invite on, somebody that I know will teach and share and excite us with their wisdom around prayer, around New Thought teachings. And this week is absolutely no exception to that, because I'm excited to be here with Reverend Dr. Jennings this week, who is tuning in all the way from, I think, Colorado. I'm not sure. I didn't ask Reverend Jesse where he is, but we'll find out where he is exactly when he comes on. Reverend Jesse is the Senior Minister of Creative Life Ministry, and he has created and authored this fantastic book, this resource that I would just say, read this. The Essential Ernest Holmes is the most beautiful rendition of Ernest Holmes' work, and one that will really move and inspire to understand Dr. Ernest Holmes more deeply. So I'm in gratitude for Reverend Jesse for creating this wonderful book. And Reverend Jesse is a contributor as an editor to the Science of Mind magazine, regularly showing up every month with The Way It Works as his question and answer column, and creates the October daily guides for the Science of Mind magazine also. And in 1997, Reverend Jesse was given the award of Doctor of Divinity, and in 2019, the highest award within our community and faith community of Science of Mind, the Ernest Holmes Award. So I'm just so excited and thrilled, and I'm going to now bring on Reverend Dr. Jesse Jennings here onto the Cosmic Prayer. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Laura. It's a joy to be with you.
It's amazing to be with you again. And where are you exactly coming in from?
I'm in Texas. I'm on the Gulf Coast of Texas, suburb of Houston. Yes.
Fantastic. So thank you for joining us here today. And for those that are watching, I know we have some viewers watching. Hello, Wayne. It's great to be with you. And whoever else is watching, welcome in to this week's Cosmic Prayer. We're going to have a deep conversation about prayer, as we always do. And I'm really interested, Reverend Jesse, on your idea of prayer and how prayer inspires you in your personal life.
Prayer to me is a celebration of life. It's a celebration of freedom. That no matter what human agency anyone might be dealing with, no matter what limited conditions in space and time anyone might be facing, there's a power that you can go to in your mind and have complete freedom, have complete liberation, not only from, but freedom to grow, freedom to expand, freedom to have greater ideas than one's ever had before. That's the activity of prayer. And the presence that is taught in Science of Mind that we interact with is a universal intelligence that has no particular agenda of its own beyond I am, beyond just to be. And so as large a concept as I can come up with for how my life might look is perfectly acceptable to this divine intelligence that receives that and acts on it. So there's like no ceiling to what can be.
And I love what you've just said about freedom, because often when I go into, not often, I can go into prayer often and not even be in that place of freedom. It's like I forget that that's there. I don't know if that makes sense to you. Sometimes I have to tell myself I'm entering into prayer and it is an infinite place that I'm going to. And often I can forget that even when I'm in prayer and still be talking, I think, to myself. Yeah.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It absolutely makes sense. I mean, we speak and we live through our conditions. And I don't know, the initial concept of prayer as it was given to me as a kid, and I think this is probably largely the case, at least in the Western world, was that you pray when you need something.
Yeah.
You pray if there's an immediate need, or you pray for protection, or you say your prayers at night for the good of the family and so on. But there's always a petition. There's always a request back of it. And so that's what I went forward with until I found metaphysics, which broadened out the picture a great deal. It's like getting another look at the plans, getting another look at the blueprint of creation, not a specific set of marching orders for me, but how it all fits together, the great patterning intelligence of life. And I may discover that what I thought I want, I don't necessarily want. And I may discover that what I have is acceptable if I just reframe it. That it's not really a problem,
Yes. So how do we bring that freedom, that knowing of freedom? How do we bring it out of, or do we, this is more the question, bring it out of that place of prayer that we're entering into when we're entering into that knowing of the infinite? How do we continue to commune with that? It's like keeping one foot, one foot on the earth in the world and one foot in the world. How do we bring that through with our daily expression and experience of life?
Great question. Two ways. The first way is do it regularly. It's not a hit or miss thing. Because again, what I heard as a child was you pray when there's a need, but once the fire's out, you move on and you get back to ordinary critical thinking. What was not put across is to have a regular spiritual practice that doesn't necessarily involve crisis, that you go to this thing because it's a good, healthy thing to do. It's like exercise. It's like diet. It's like it's greater. It's greater even than those, because those only work on one system at a time. And prayer works, it's organic, it's holistic, it works on everything. So that's one thing, is to do it regularly. The other thing is to cultivate the memory of it, the feeling that you have, so that when you feel something in prayer, it's such a compelling feeling, you can't lose it. Just like your favorite song. I was rocking to the music you had as I was in the waiting room coming on, and it's got a great beat. And what was the music you had on when we did the archives piece with Reverend Kathy?
Oh, that was the Mystic. In the Mystic, that's is it Van Halen?
Van Morrison.
Van Morrison. Van Halen's a bit heavier.
Van Halen. Yeah, that'd be good too. Yeah, Into the
Van Morrison.
And it was instrumental, and I caught that. I'm like, where have I heard that before? And it was like Into the Mystic, and it's just great. Well, when you have a favorite song like that, or you have, in fact, my wife and I were talking about this the other day, when you have a song that was in the summer of 19 something, whatever was going on at the time is associated with that song. If you were brokenhearted, or if you were excited about something, you just been accepted to school or whatever, there's a feeling and so anytime now, 40, 50 years later, this thing comes on, you hear it in a store, the radio, the feeling wants to come back over you. So in other words, the thing about prayer is to cultivate the feeling that you have in prayer, so that it's a familiar, warm, comforting sensation that you can call up at will, like the plot of a favorite book or movie or anything like
that. Okay, so I love what you're saying, is this creating a memory, a prayer memory. Yeah. Creating a prayer memory. So when Ernest Holmes talks about pray with warmth, pray with conviction, he's talking really about going beyond just doing that in the moment because it's sort of warm and we have the warmth and the conviction in the moment of the prayer, actually cultivating a memory of that so that we can enter back into that memory at any moment.
Yes, exactly.
Oh my word, I love this. It's an entity, isn't it?
It really is. So at a given moment in your prayer or in your treatment, as we call them, style them, at least one form of prayer in CSL, at a given point in there, you have a feeling of yes. You have a feeling of absolute yes. Yes, I
Yes.
feel my connection with the infinite. Yes, I know everything's going to be all right. I know everything already is all right on some level, and I'm calling that into form. And so it's really that packet of energy that's the yes, that's the thing that we remember. And we go back to that. And so we reassure. So let's say I do some prayer work this morning. It's morning here still. And, then this afternoon I get busy and maybe I get worried again about whatever it was I'd taken into prayer. I'm not sure this is going to work out. What do? I go back to that feeling of yes, I know on some level. On this level, on this form level, it may not appear yet, but in the unseen realm, the work has been done. And the thing about the unseen realm is, if we're honest with ourselves, it's where everything comes from, and we know that. And everyone knows that. Everybody has a different explanation about it, but everybody knows, including we ourselves. When sperm met egg, we came out of the everywhere into the here, right?
Yeah.
Everything in nature, every building that goes up, everything comes out of the invisible into the visible. So calling something deliberately out of the invisible is not a wildly hopeful thing to do. It's a perfectly natural thing to do. I'm just giving it a sense of structure because it's in my life. It's coming into my life.
And yet we're not trained, I say trained, educated. We're not educated to believe that that's within our power to do that. And
This
so we grow up believing that it's something that, it is something magical, or it's a miracle, or it's mystical. And it's really, oh my gosh, you'd have to have super powers to be able to do that. And I think as I'm saying this, though, I was talking to a friend the other day about looking and seeing on YouTube how younger and younger people are getting it. I mean, younger people are getting it, are understanding the power of manifestation, of being self-manifesting. And it feels to me as if there is this new era of person, that consciousness is the veil is being lifted.
Yes.
So that even our children at my child's age, she's 20 now, I would never have understood. I wanted to understand it, but I didn't have that ability to manifest as quickly as she does. Because I wasn't taught that. I've had to learn and unlearn and learn and unlearn. And she's come in an era where it's now consciousness has lifted, and so she gets it without having to unlearn a lot. Well, she still needs to unlearn, because we all do, but you know what I mean.
I do.
Yeah.
Oh yes, I do. Yeah. Well, she and others like her are going to be really the salvation of the planet.
Yes.
I mean, we've looked to the young for a lot. We've looked to the young since the generation after when I was young. When I was young, the young were looked at as being terrifying, but starting with the next generation up, we've looked to the young to carry the torch forward. And I really think that this current, not that the other generations have dropped it, but I really think this current group of young people, cohort of young people, have it going on spiritually. I saw, maybe you saw this too, but in the midst of the pandemic, or in the first 6-8 months of the lockdowns, how many teenagers and 20-somethings were posting online doing personal ritual work.
Right.
They were casting circles and lighting candles and doing Wiccan and earth-based traditional work. And how they came to that, I don't know.
I do.
Tell them, please.
Well, I think I'm just going to turn the light on 1 second, because I realize I'm a bit in the dark here. Sorry. I think that we have laid a foundational groundwork for me, my generation, I'm 57. I grew up with in a Jewish household, my family of origin Jewish. And when I was 20, I was given You Can Heal Your Life, or 21, maybe.
Yeah.
And that was, for me, opened my world. And I think that there are many people of my generation that would have been given these books, Shakti Gawain, You Can Heal Your Life, popularized ideas of Ernest Holmes' work or New Thought work, and maybe has not been, these people that I would have considered or have been given that generalized term of being light workers or wounded healers, that were never really able to fully express that. And then we've had children, and those ideas have been, dropped, seeded down into this generation of children who I think are just prepared. They've come in knowing why they've come here at this time, what they're here for. That's just my idea. I mean,
that sounds marvelous. And I mean, how great to not have to waste 20, 30 years and have all that stuff to unlearn. And yeah, we all have a little, but some have less than others. Some of us are, we're all born geniuses, but some of us are less damaged than others. That's a saying I've heard, and no, that's absolutely fantastic that you should have that experience in your daughter and in the group going forward, because that's, like I say, that's our healing. That's the thing. You and I were talking before we went live, about the situation in the world, and is it getting better? Is it getting worse? What's going to happen here? I think that I'm an incurable optimist, and I think most people in CSL are, because it's an optimistic, idealistic teaching. We don't have an end of the world story. We don't have a final judgment story. So we expect things to improve, and where things are going, to me, is I see people, including myself, coming into this teaching as when I did, and you buy in, and it feels right, and you start to do your work, and you become a manifesting machine. You're demonstrating right and left, and friends, and money, and and if you're young, health is, in a way, for many young people, is sort of a given. But it's you keep going with this, but you're working at something of a superficial level, and then one day it all stops. Mm-hmm. One day it comes to a screeching halt, and what's happened is you've reached the tolerance point of your own belief. How good am I willing to have it be? You might ask yourself. And it's what Louise Hay, whom you mentioned, talked about, the shame core. We hit the shame core and so on. And I think that collectively, as a species, we're hitting our shame core.
Ooh.
Look at how we're taking stock of the harm we've done to each other through racial inequity, through systemic racism and sexism and homophobia, and all of these different separations, false separations that we've instituted. And we're coming to own that. We're coming to, particularly people who look like me, we're coming to own that and recognize the pain of that. And so we're experiencing a fractured outer reality corresponding to that, in the way that an addict hits bottom. I mean, they're sailing along fine and practicing their addiction, and everything seems great, but they're walking on thin ice, and the moment comes and then you fall through. And this is sort of, I think, what we're going on in the world.
Oh, that's so powerful, what you've just said, because it feels then like as if we've all been on some level addicted to the kind of materialistic viewpoint of what we want for our lives, and how we that looking outside of ourselves rather than turning within to the truth of who we are. So that has to break away on some level, doesn't it? That
exactly.
has to all fall down. It can't uphold itself.
It's been a big conversation in Science of Mind for a long time about this. So are we really about just manifesting new homes and cars and this sort of thing? You know, the prosperity message of Science of Mind is aimed at the upper middle class. It's not directed to people who work 2 and 3 jobs and are still, as the saying goes, they make just enough money to stay broke. You know, they're having to pay for the medical care and the food and the, you know, new tires on the car to get to those jobs. And it's been convenient for a lot of us to only look at that at Christmas, you know, to only look at that when it's the day of helping or the weekend where we pay attention to this. And the fact of the matter is, and then we go back and we affirm oneness. We go, oh, it's all one life and it's all this, except I'm not going to look at a lot of that life because it makes me uncomfortable. And so, well, we can't have it both ways. We're either all one or we're not. And if we're all one, then these are even more than our brothers and sisters. These are aspects. These are like limbs of us. You know, these are aspects of this one life that we have to pay attention to. And I think the world is we're all responsible for that. And I'm not trying to be preachy and point fingers and encourage all viewers to do any one particular thing. Be conscious of the fact that I read something beautiful the other day. And I don't know where this came from, but it said the job that you have that you don't like is somebody else's dream job. The house that you live in that's too small for you and you wish you had better is somebody, to the homeless person, that's their dream home, you know. To be aware that, and I guess where all of this goes is back to gratitude.
Yes.
It's back to gratitude and that feeling of that I'm so grateful for what I have and I wish the same or better for you.
Yes. Yeah. It's so true. I'm at the point now where, because I was in that place, you know, and through COVID, being homeless, home challenged, whatever you want to call it, but it wasn't good, and not there now in a slightly better. It's okay, and though just realizing, even in myself, getting to that place where having that compassion for me and for others in that experience, knowing that this too is God expressing, all of it is God expressing. And I believe what you've said about, you know, what's going on in the world right now is if we can each get to that place of knowing that all of it is expressing as God, then that's where the war disappears, because there isn't that internal conflict. And without the internal conflict, it won't be showing up externally.
Exactly. You know, my world will never have peace as long as I launch bombs in my mind, as long as I have revenge fantasies and this going on. I'll never have peace in my life as long as I live in greed, and I only would live in greed as a result of fear, and only in fear as a result of feeling separate from the source of all creation, which is again why to hurry back to the source of all creation in my prayer life, to be reminded that I have enough and I can be grateful for what I have, which then there's absolutely no call for greed. And I bring greed up because greed to me is the motivating factor behind war, more really than anything. I mean, it gets dressed up as a religious thing or a border skirmish or some kind of national sovereignty thing or NATO membership or whatever, but you get right down to the bottom line and it's about money. It's about money and strategic land for money and resources under the land and so on. And so all of that, if my greed personally can be healed through recognition of this ever benevolent source, then so can the leaders of nations' greed. And then, I mean, nobody beyond that, I said this in a talk yesterday, you know, foot soldiers don't start wars. It's the leaders. Right. And back in the Vietnam era, we talked about putting leaders of countries, putting boxing gloves on them and putting them in a ring and saying, the two of you work it out. And let's save some lives here. Let's save some civilians' lives and some landscape, And I mean, that's a little silly, but you get the idea that it's driven by this, and then you whip up a nationalistic fervor behind it to get public opinion on your side, and the whole thing is a sham. It's all based in fear and a sense of separation. So
Yes.
my point is that even if a country goes to war and it wins and it conquers some other country and it gets what it wants, it's nobody's happy. The problem's still not solved because that gnawing greed is still there, and now greater conquest is envisioned. It's just like with the person, the ravenous need that some individuals have for control over others. No control is enough until and so then eventually what happens is the system overheats and it collapses, and people or institutions realize, well, there's a truth back of all creation that is love. That's not conflict, and it's not possessiveness, acquisitiveness. The truth of life is love. And it's then that they start listening to the great spiritual teachers of the ages, and they start reading their scriptures again, and everybody gets penitent, and we go through these cycles. But maybe this time
we have there's something I want to mention. We have a few comments here on the here we go. Sylvia is here watching. Hello, Sylvia. Welcome. Wonderful conversation at every level. It confirms the alchemy that has been occurring within. Maureen, welcome, Maureen. Thank you. Speaking truth. And Wayne. We all breathe light.
Ooh, I like that. That's pretty.
Yes. Thank you, Wayne. And we have Bonnie here. Bonnie has her show coming up at 8 p.m. UK time on New Thought Media Network. Today, your doula for grief. Go back to the feeling of yes. It's a great guidance. It's wonderful that everybody's here and sharing in this conversation. If you have a question for Reverend Jessie, please pop it into the chat here, because we like doing things like this on the Cosmic Prayer, inviting you in because we're a community here discussing prayer. And the question I have, my next question or just insight here for you, Reverend Jessie, because we're talking about what's happening in our world right now, on our planet, and a human behavior. And on the one hand, we have this kind of immense threat of bombs and war and killing and people losing their lives and 18,000 guns being distributed to Ukrainian civilians 4 days ago. I mean, that's like quite bizarre. Just suddenly everybody's been given a big. And then here on Facebook and in our spiritual community, and it's outpictured on Facebook, we have so many groups coming up, prayer groups, prayer gatherings, places for people to connect together, to pray, to know the truth. Do you believe that this can be the tipping point, where we're all showing up in so many beautiful ways?
Yes. When you saw the outpouring of feeling after the murder of George Floyd in this country, and other murders of African American citizens, it built a movement. Some would call political, or some would call economic. I would call it love-based. I would call it holistic and organic and good. That says, wait a minute, Black lives matter as much as any other life, and we need to recognize this, and we need to act like it, and we need to have laws and rules and law enforcement that acts like it. And I don't see that movement going away. I don't see it dying out. I see it morphing, and different. Now voting rights are an issue, and so there are different aspects of the problem that will be addressed by this. But I see an anti-war movement coming that's going to, just like the anti-racism movement, that is going to evolve and grow into a pro something else movement. This is actually a conversation I had with Dr. Tracy Brown the other day about anti-racism is a wonderful thing, but what are we going to put in the place of racism? And it can't just be no racism. It has to be a cherishing. It has to be, an activity, not just a stasis. And the same with war. And Tracy put something up on Facebook yesterday about that war is not just peace is not just the absence of conflict. It's got to be as vivid and engaging a state as with sensory involvement as war is, to pull us in. And I think that's where the collective imagination of the world is heading.
And if we go back to, John Lennon lying in bed with Yoko Ono, doing what they were doing to know peace at that time. It's not that it's a new concept for us as humans to really, it's just that for some reason we keep repeating the same patterns. Humanity keeps repeating the same patterns or refuses to unlearn old patterns.
I'm going to talk here like an old man for a minute. and I'm not, like ancient, but I hear myself doing that. We're really young as a species. We're really young, even as Western Civ, where you and I happen to hang out. It's really only been the last 150, 175 years that there's been a conversation around the possibility of ending war.
Yeah.
On the planet. I mean, you've had your Quakers before that. You had certain pacifist groups, but the idea war was just a given until it became, starting broadly at the end of the 19th century. Some thinkers started to write about, say, what if there were another way to solve problems? And then it began to catch, and it caught on big time after the Second World War, the baby boom generation. What if we could all just sit down together and talk things out and not have to make war? And for the first time, really, in human history, it became an option. It's still not the chosen option, obviously, but by leaders and governments, but it was on the table. And so we may not live to see it in our generations, but I see it coming. Because human sacrifice went away. A number of untenable things have happened. Slavery has been largely, not entirely, but largely abolished on the earth. And it's completely... Not entirely, but it's completely seen, it's held in the public esteem as immoral. And for a long time, there were footnotes and asterisks to that. And there were times when, and, the treatment of prisoners of war and so on. And now, women, people of color, gay and transgendered individuals. Does everybody have equal rights? No, but the conversation is about rights. The conversation is about rights. And there was a time when we didn't even have domestic violence laws. So,
right.
Yeah.
And the most, for me, where I've been really intensifying my prayer practice is because I don't like to, I used to be in that frame of mind of, I'm not going to watch the news. That's just me kind of filing into the media kind of trap of watching the news. Now I watch it, not intent, I just watch glimmers of it and I see what's happening and I know the love and I know the truth. And I think what I thought the other day was, wow, this is incredible that we're not all reliant on seeing the news so much anymore. There's this whole social media aspect where we can watch a place being bombed in real time.
Yeah.
Because it's happening live and we're sitting somewhere else on the planet, or I'm sitting somewhere else thinking, oh my word, this is just horrific that I can actually watch it happening before my eyes. That surely has got to really, as humanity, grows or evolves, that's got to inspire us to do something.
Yes.
To intervene. How can we sit and watch it? It's one thing seeing it because it happened yesterday, but to actually watch it in real time, that's
I know, it's astonishing. And that's the one mind at work. And, you know, the Armenian genocide of, what was it, 1914 through 1916 was deniable for so long because no one was there taking pictures. No one was there. It was a rumor, and millions died. Millions left the planet, and the hole that they left behind was never fully explained because it was never fully looked at. And when I think it was General Eisenhower, when they liberated Auschwitz, he said, before anyone does anything, bring photographers up here to this fence to take pictures of this, because no one will believe what we're seeing here, what's happened here. And so much has happened in history that's gone undocumented and uncommented on. And you're absolutely right about now it being in our face. The Vietnam War was the first that came into our living room, but those were edited scenes that we were seeing on the evening news in the West, you know. But now on social media, with the immediacy of Twitter and so on, where people are filming unedited, right on their devices, the horror of war is inescapable.
Yeah, and that did happen with George Floyd. We saw that.
We saw that.
We saw it, and the shock of that, and it, in a way, that is it's like a blessing in disguise that we can see it, so that we can wake up, so that humanity can wake up to the shock of that.
Exactly right.
And take action. So prayer is the action. Prayer is that entity that we can really use. It's here right now. What would you say to anybody that's thinking, oh, you know, it's not going to work? How can prayer work to end war or to create peace?
Well, maybe what you want to do is not start there. You know, don't give yourself the hardest, largest possible task. If you're new to prayer, or you're new to this kind of prayer, pray to have a good day yourself. Pray to be truthful and in integrity and so forth yourself. And then let it expand from there to where you really feel like you have the hang of it. And now you can pray for others and your family, and you can see peace in your neighborhood, and you can see peace in your town, and then it grows out from there. Also, I would say, remember that there's no one right type of prayer. The point Ernest Holmes was making was that whatever kind of prayer you do, to whatever kind of deity you believe in, which is entirely up to you. Whatever kind of prayer you do, just believe that it's doing something. Believe that it's working, that it's not just idle words. Believe in that. And you mentioned, Laura, being raised in a Jewish household, in a Jewish family, which is amazing and wonderful. And I got to tell you, honestly, about my favorite prayer in the world is the Dayenu. Because it's so real to say it would have been enough if you, God, had just given us survival, just given us the basic necessities for survival. But look at what else you did. Look at all these other blessings. That's an amazing way of expressing gratitude. That's not humble and cringing and, oh, thank you. It's like, hey, look, it's like you say to a friend. And good effective prayer is talking with spirit, talking in spirit, like you're talking with a friend, like you're talking with something, not an authority figure, you know, but a peer, really, because if God is all there is, then we are the experience of God in form. And when you're talking to a friend and a friend gives you this great gift, you say, look, it would have been enough if I just had your friendship, you know, just a card and you gave me all this. I mean, it's such a heartfelt expression, and I just love that. So whatever kind of prayer anyone does out of their faith tradition or combining faith traditions, which is perfectly acceptable too, just believe that something's happening and you'll feel better. And if nothing else happened beyond you felt better, that's a win for you and for all of us. Because when you feel better, you don't hurt anybody. You don't harm any. You don't contemplate harming anyone. You're peaceful, and you're conscious, and you're directed, and you're also, you have clarity of mind, and you can do what needs doing in your life. And so if that was all that happened, it would have been enough. But so much more happens when we pray.
Yes. And if that was all that happens, it would be enough, because as that's happening for us, we're changing, we're making that, or that change is happening through us, that transformation of the way that we perceive the world. And so we show up in a different way. I show up differently because I now have this awareness of my connection, and that feels good.
Exactly. And people look at you and they'll say, you're happy. When I met you on screen, when we did the archives interview, the first thought I had when I saw you, said, "This is a happy person." You came on smiling and happy and relaxed, and I'm thinking, and she's hosting this.
I should be a bag of nerves.
Yeah, exactly. And this is on your nickel, and it's, there's a lot of moving pieces, and you didn't know me and how I was going to be and all of that. And you were just happy and bright-eyed and open and willing. And it's like, well, this is obviously, I mean, this wasn't like a whole long judgment I went into, but this is somebody who's done their work. There used to be a TV commercial in the U.S. where there's this guy on a plane, sitting on a plane, and he's calling the flight attendant. This is years ago. He's calling the flight attendant. He's complaining about everything. He's calling the flight attendant over. It's too hot in here. When can I get something to drink? When can I this? When are we going to take off? When? And she says, "Let me get you a magazine." And she hands him a magazine, and he says, "Oh, I've seen this before." He said, "In fact, I wrote an article in it called The Power of Positive Thinking."
Was it you?
Was it me? Yeah, really. Yeah. My magazine. Our magazine, Holly Sharp's magazine. No, it's like, if we really believe this stuff and we really have a rich, engaging spiritual practice, our default value is going to be pleasant. Our default value is going to be interested and excited, and we'll have our moments. We'll have, we'll
definitely,
but we'll bounce back. We'll bounce back from that, and we'll be. And so, I want to live in. This is something I tell people at my center. I say, my investment in this is that I want to live in a better world. I want, and so when their lights come on and they realize who they are, they behave better toward each other, and that's the kind of world I want to live in. I want to drive on the streets with people who feel that way. I want to shop in the shops with people who feel that way, and so on. And I believe everyone can, and maintain their individuality and their eccentricities and their quirkiness and all this, but still know who they are and be comfortable inside their own skin to where what shows up as they interact with me is healthy and wholesome. And that's doable.
And so this idea of prayer, as you said at the beginning of the conversation, in our community of New Thought, Science of Mind, religious science, we may come in to this, or people may be attracted to this whole philosophy, thinking that, oh yeah, I'm going to manifest this incredible life and, live in the way that I really want to live, prosperously, and with money and wealth and health and joy and all of that, which is incredible. And yet on a deeper level, if we can get to that place of just being so lit up with the now, regardless of what's going on, regardless of where we live, regardless of whether we've got the car, the job, the house, the holidays, that's a richer experience. For me, that's a richer experience of life.
Oh, it absolutely is. And I think, and I can't prove it, but I believe that when we live as you have described, there's a greater chance, not a lesser chance, a greater chance of fame and fortune because we're not in our own way. And so you'll hear, for example, you'll hear artists, musical artists, performing artists, receiving awards and things. I was watching some video of Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, uh, past inductions of musical heroes of mine, and you'll hear these people say, "All I ever wanted to do was play music. All I ever wanted to do was play it better than I had the day before. Pick up my instrument, be more proficient and more focused, and now I'm here." And now I've sold 50 million copies of my album and I'm famous,
Yeah.
and on and on. So I think there's a greater chance of that if we're out of our own way. I know there's the whole story about the tortured genius and the starving artist and all of this thing, but I still really think that the people that we know of through the ages have been people who on some level got their own divine connection going, consciously, deliberately. Might not have called it that by a long shot, but I think that's
Yeah.
what happened. So,
So Ernest Holmes knew that, and Ernest Holmes knew that to cultivate that, prayer was the tool that he used. Spiritual mind treatment was the practice that he developed. And I know that at some points it was longer than 5 steps, wasn't it? I've heard there's been like 7-step treatments. Yeah.
there were 7. Yeah, there were at one time, 2 different religious science organizations for about 60 years, from just before his passing until fairly recently. And one group had a 5-step treatment that was come up with by committee, actually, and pouring through. And the other group had a 7-step treatment that was come up with by committee. And what both groups had done is gone back through Ernest's writing, because he never said, here is the one by God way to do spiritual mind treatment.
Okay.
He just kind of went on about it, and so they poured over all of his writings and sifted through it, and they wanted to come up with a standardized thing that could be taught in all our centers in the curriculum. So one group had 5 and one group had 7, and the seven is in the third. Let me not make this too complicated without a graphic, but the third step in the 5-step treatment is where you affirm. It's where you realize a particular thing. Yeah. And then in certain instances, you'll have doubt about that. You'll say that it seems so overwhelming. And so then what you do in switching now to the 7-step treatment, you insert a step there called denial, where you deny that the doubt has any power behind it.
Okay. So we're not denying that it's happening. We're not denying that war is happening. We're denying the doubt that we have about the war happening.
Yes, and you're denying that doubt has its own set of laws behind it.
Okay.
That poverty has its own set of laws behind it. You're saying it's a misuse. It's a misuse of the one power, and so therefore it's manageable in this treatment. And then the other step that you would insert that takes it up to 7 is that you follow up the denial with a reaffirmation. Okay. Therefore, I now know that. And people do this like with illness, with disease. I know the doctors say this and this, and I'm worried about it. And it's, the statistical prognosis for people like me is such and such. So what I'm going to deny is that there's a law of disease, that there's some other power operating here beyond the power of God. And then I'm going to reaffirm that I'm, so you don't need the 7 all the time, I would guess. Although it may be, I've read treatments that had it in there for no particular reason, like it wasn't called in by anybody, but they'll say, I know that anything that might oppose this in my consciousness is now dissolved back into the nothingness whence it came. you'll hear language like that's kind of a formal, stilted way of putting it, but that you'll hear language like that where you're anticipating that there might be a doubt and you're dispelling the whole thing, just sweeping it away. So that again, I know with full conviction, blah, blah, blah.
Okay. I like that. So it's not really an argumentative treatment. It's just if there's a little seed, I'm just going to go over that and then I'm going to reaffirm it again.
Yeah.
It's so powerful. I understand. I can realize why you've written this book.
Oh, yeah.
You must be so in love with the teachings and the work and the wisdom of New Thought and how Ernest Holmes interpreted and synthesized everything together. And I love this book. Thank you so much for creating it.
You are so welcome.
Thank you so much for creating. This is the Essential Ernest Holmes.
Yeah, that was 22 years ago. I started pulling that together. I've been in religious science since 1976, so that will be 46 years this year, isn't it? 46.
Wow.
And I've explored. I came out of a largely Christian household, nominally Christian household, where we attended big, beautiful churches. This was in New York City, and then my family got involved in New Thought when I was probably 6 or 8 years old. They started going to hear Dr. Barker at Lincoln Center, so I was just kind of brought up in it. And then I personally bought in at age 20. But I've explored a lot of different faith systems, and everything that I've seen sort of operates, meaning no disrespect at all, but they all sort of operate under the umbrella of science of mind with different cultural nuances, different prayers, different songs, different rituals, all beautiful, all powerful. And yet the kind of the lodestone, all of it is, it's done to us as we believe.
As we believe, yes.
So that's why I keep coming back to him and his work and that of the early generations of New Thought. I also have a new book out called More Than We Seem, which is a collection of columns from what is it called now? I call it the Q&A column, the way it works column.
Oh, wow.
From the magazine.
Is that book on your website? I'll just bring your website up.
It's it should be on my website, and it's I'm looking here, it's somewhere on my shelf.
Oh, you've got it there.
Here's a copy of the book. It's on Amazon.
Fantastic.
And
good. More
that
than
came
we
out
seen.
in September. More Than We Seen.
This
is what I did.
Collection of the Q&As.
Collection of the best of the Q&As over the past 30 years. I've been writing them, and this is what I did in the lockdown. Right. Everybody was saying, learn a language or learn to play the guitar. And I thought, well, let me pull these things together.
Bring it all together.
Yeah. Holly
and
Sharp
I love the title.
So.
Oh, I love the title.
Thank you.
It's so profound, especially if you were creating that during lockdown. That's so poignant.
Yeah, because we didn't know what to seem then. So
no, we didn't. More. Oh, we're here with Reverend Dr. Jesse Jennings on New Thought Media Network. This is the Cosmic Prayer. I'm just so excited to be here with you, Reverend Jesse, and you're sharing. So grateful for you being here, sharing and teaching us your idea, your wisdom on prayer and how prayer can really change our lives, transform our experience of life. Thank you so much for being here.
You are so welcome, and thank you for having me. It's always a joy to talk to you.
It's brilliant.
To your listeners.
I'm going to put this up. This is, here we are. We can actually, Reverend Jesse is at the creativelife.org center. And Reverend Jesse, you do have a class coming up, don't you? You're going to be teaching, or have you begun the class already? Teaching the Essential Ernest Holmes.
That particular one is in week 6, but it's starting over on July the 7th. The Essential Ernest Holmes. I don't know if they have a registration portal up yet, but they will.
Okay.
If I may also, I'll mention that this coming Monday, a week from today, I'm starting a 4-week book study on a book called The Sacred and the Profane by Moshe
Oh,
Eliade.
I love that book.
You love that? Oh, great. Well, you come in then. You come in. 4 weeks. We're going to learn a little.
On your website.
I believe it is, and if it's not, it's at csl.org. In the
it's at csl.org. Okay.
Click professional development at csl.org, and it'll take you to it. So that's going to be
fantastic.
Great fun. Hour and a half a week.
That's an amazing book. That really got me thinking about what is sacred, what I think is sacred, and what I think is non-sacred. And then I came to the understanding that it's all sacred.
Exactly right. Yeah, I love it too. And
beautiful.
Coming at it from, we say, Laura, we in CSO as well, all the religions in the world, they have this at their core. And then I think, well, where's our evidence for that? It's a nice thing to think. Then you read him. You read an academic like Eliade,
yes.
and you read Joseph Campbell, and you read Maria Gimbutas, and you read some of these other anthropologists and sociologists and so on, and you see it really is there. That really, from the dawn of time, humankind has had this sense of inner divinity that's then expressed through group ritual. So it's going to be a kick to go through that book with other readers and just have wonderful animated conversation about it.
Oh, fantastic. So that's The Sacred and the Profane, and you can find that if you're listening and watching right now, you can find that on the CSL Further Education on the website. Go to Further Educational Development. We'll be joining that group. I know that's going to be it. And I'm just going to put this up because tomorrow here, as of tomorrow here on New Thought Media Network, we have a month of prayer on Zoom at 9:30 in the morning. You can join at any time. That's Mountain Time. You can join on Zoom. I'll put the link down below in the Facebook feed, and you can just click on the link and come and join us for 20 minutes. We're having a month of communal prayer for peace on our planet, knowing planetary peace for global peace here on New Thought Media Network.
Beautiful.
And I'm going to, it will be beautiful. You're welcome to join, Reverend Jesse. I'll send you the link.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
May I add one more thing?
Please do.
All right. Another opportunity. This is not a class. This is not a monetized thing. Another opportunity for your viewers is KT Roxburgatti, who's a senior in the School of Ministry. You know KT, okay.
I do. I'm with her in school.
Perfect. Well, KT was part of a group that paneled 12 new practitioners in Ukraine.
In the Ukraine.
And she's collecting treatments, written treatments and affirmations to be sent through them into Ukraine, to the Ukrainian people. In other words, these are not things that are just going to be around on Facebook out here where you and I would be reading them. These are going to the actual people that are in the train tunnels under the city, hiding out and making their way to the borders and so on. So any of your viewers, you do not have to be a practitioner or a trained, credentialed anything. Write up a prayer. Write up, if it's just a statement of goodwill, that you can send these to me, or you can say, you have Katie's email address. You can send them directly to her, and they're going in waves, because they keep coming in. So
thank you so much for bringing that up and sharing it. I think that is so powerfully important that we all know that we're sending prayers, and written prayers are just as dynamic as prayers that we do in the moment in our mind. To read a written prayer and that knowing of comfort and love that we're connecting with our fellow human beings through prayer. To receive a letter is something so beautiful, isn't it? A prayer letter. So thank you, Reverend Jesse, for being here. I would normally ask if you would like to share a prayer at the end. We've got kind of 2 minutes left. Would you
absolutely.
Would you share a prayer for 2 minutes before we close the show?
A 2-minute prayer. All right.
A 2-minute Prayer with
It's going to have to be 5 steps and
Reverend
not
Jesse
7.
Jennings.
We don't have time
Yeah.
for the 7s. It's going to have to be 5. On this sweet day, this sweet late winter morning here, afternoon in England, it is so easy to feel the presence of the one life, the one mind, the one power that created this earth, created seasons on it, created we who love this planet and each other, and created in us the divine spark of joyous self-awareness. There is a law of mind in which we live, and into that law I speak this word now about every person watching this broadcast, about peace and harmony and well-being in the heart of each and the life of each, that this blessing radiates out to all whom they touch, their families and friends and neighbors. And this intention that is so holy and lofty, and yet at the same time so simple, of just exchanged well-being and positive intention, now expands to include Ukraine, Russia, all surrounding states, all involved parties, including we ourselves here, that there is a cessation now of hostilities, an openness to negotiation and compromise and understanding, the greed and shame and the misery they entail now fade away to nothingness, leaving in their place the clear and confident knowing that all there is spirit, by whatever name we call it, however we may approach it, there is but one. And so for the peace in this world, for the great creative ferment of energy of each of us, now getting on with our lives, doing wonderful, constructive, positive things for ourselves and each other, for all of this, I am so deeply grateful. And I release this idea, this intention, this knowing into that spiritual law, that principle of creativity that always itself says yes, accepts it, builds it out in form. And with that, I just let it be, and so it is.
And so it is. Thank you, Reverend Jesse, for being here.
Thank you so much, Laura.
Thank you. And thank you to everybody that's been watching, whether you're here now live or at a later date watching this amazing broadcast of the Cosmic Prayer with Reverend Jesse Jennings. Until next time, knowing love and brilliant blessings, bright blessings for you from me, from Reverend Jesse. Goodbye. See you next week on the Cosmic Prayer.